Evening. Welcome to episode 5 of the Moody Gooners podcast. Today we're going to be reviewing the Man City game, basically, and just talking about how we feel about the match. Going into a bit of detail there, what went wrong. Obviously, it was a very, very tough chastening night for the Gunners, and then obviously apologies to everyone for how late this one's come out. Been a few people on annual leave at Moody Gooners Towers, but I'll be your host tonight for the show. And so thanks for joining me. I think the thing I wanted to sort of start with first, and I don't think we've really sort of gone into any great detail on the previous episodes, is to really sort of give you a flavour for the Moody Gooners and what this whole podcast is about. So I think there's obviously a lot of Arsenal discourse out there, a lot of podcasts out there. I think for me and for Jason, our esteemed co-host, for us it's about trying to create a podcast with a bit of a difference, basically. So it's all well and good, two fanatical Gooners producing content. Obviously we love the club. Both been sort of members for a number of years. Myself personally had a season ticket from 1995, in the Clock End at Highbury, and still get to games now. But what we wanted to do is, in all honesty, we similar to what a lot of people sort of experience these days, and we both sort of have suffered and continue to suffer from mental health challenges. No different to a lot of millions and millions of people across the world. So what we wanted to do was, provide some sort of insightful, considered chat, but sort of have that hook around mental health. So obviously each week we do our predictions, and the whole idea around that is once the predictions are in, whoever loses the prediction, or whoever's prediction didn't come true, that money gets donated to Mind, which is our charity of choice. So I just wanted to provide that little bit of context and that update there, because obviously a lot of the time on these podcasts we dive into the content, we review the game, and then we sort of talk about that at the end. But if that's for you, if you're sort of passionate about mental health, please like, subscribe, share the videos, get the word out there. We're sort of working out really that we could be a good few £100 donated to charity at the end of every season, based around it. So we think it's a fantastic cause, great to produce the content, but I think the hook around the mental health piece is something that's very close to both of us. So hope you're enjoying the content so far, and we'll go into it today. So I think this is going to be a fairly short one. Again, apologies we haven't been able to get something over to you a bit sooner, but this really is basically just covering off the Man City game in a bit of detail. And I think sort of pre-game, I think it's pretty obvious. It was a pretty chastening night for everyone concerned. I think I walked away from the game feeling actually quite sort of matter of fact about it. I think after the Southampton game and the West Ham game recently, I was feeling very angry, very frustrated, feeling like some of the old sort of demons of a few years ago, where we sort of not quite been able to get over the line when the pressure has started to crank up. When you think, given the quality of the opposition in those two games, filled me with a lot of anger and frustration. And maybe the game would have been different if we'd picked up, say, 4 points in those two games going into the City game. But obviously very chastening experience. I think, I don't know, maybe I'm being a bit too downbeat about Arsenal here, but I did sort of walk away thinking, what, we're not there yet. Obviously, City have gone on to beat Fulham 2-1 since this game, which is obviously not a scoreline that's particularly going to catch the eye, but I do feel that City really stepped up in this game and really kind of put us in our place a little bit, to be honest. But I think sort of going into the normal format that we go with, I think going into the match, my mood was actually, I know I predicted on the pod last week about a 2-2 draw. My mood going into the game is very much that it was going to be 3-1 to City, potentially around that, which is mad really when you consider how different we are now as a team compared to what we were before. Really, I think if we played them probably when the original fixture was in place, maybe it would be a tighter match. But I had that sort of, I think, the negativity of having a few players injured, key players as well, and then the fact we dropped points in our previous 3 games left me fearing the worst. And I was hoping, let's go on to the themes then in that case. I mean, I think I wasn't surprised, to be honest, with what, obviously we saw basically the same team as the previous game. But obviously Xhaka came in, was well enough to start this game and came in ahead of Fabio Vieira. And I mean, let's be honest, I think, Fabio Vieira wouldn't be, he would have been fed to the lions out there in a game like that. But wasn't surprised to see Granit Xhaka come into the lineup. However, that's me saying what I think Arteta's going to do. But I think for me, obviously a lot of talk has been there recently about how Man City have set up with 2 sort of holding midfield pivots, in John Stones and Rodri, and obviously playing with 3 defenders behind. And obviously we've been lacking a little bit of composure of late. I personally would have liked to have seen Jorginho coming alongside Partey just to add a little bit of strength. He's obviously played in big games for Chelsea. He's won the Champions League, the Euros. He knows very much how to play these high pressure, high intensity games. And I think Thomas Partey has looked a little bit more mortal of late, shall we say. He's been making a few errors, and I think it's the kind of player that he's on it 9 times out of 10. But on the days when he's not on it, the midfield can just get completely overrun because we're really relying on him to sort of really anchor that midfield. And if he has a slightly off day, then that's where gaps can start to appear. So personally speaking, I still would have probably gone with a 4 at the back if I was Arsenal. So I don't think we've really got a lot of wiggle room there. I think Kivior's not ready to go in yet. Obviously, Tomiyasu's injured. Saliba's now looking like he's potentially going to be out for the season. So I would have stuck with sort of the settled back 4 we'd had for the last few games, but just probably added a little bit more protection in front of them and gone with the Jorginho and Xhaka. And that would have probably given more license to Odegaard to kind of get on the ball and not totally abandon his defensive duties, because we all know he's great at that part of his game, but certainly give him a little bit more ability to affect the game in the final third. So yeah, in short, I definitely wasn't surprised to see how Arteta went about things, because you can kind of pretty much know what he's going to do, to be honest. But I think what we've discovered from this game is that when our plan A is extremely good, it beats most teams in the league, probably in Europe, on its day. But when it's not on, there's not really. It's more like for likes and making tweaks. And I think Guardiola really has sort of shown an ability to go to another level tactically, and really interesting. Not really playing with sort of recognised fullbacks and sort of playing with a back 3 and then the 2 in front is really working for them. I have to say, when I saw that they brought, I mean, I obviously rate Kyle Walker, I rate Akanji, but when I saw that Akanji had moved over to the left, I was like, okay, I've not seen that before. But to be honest with you, there really was no drop in terms of quality. I think a lot of Gooners out there were sort of expecting Aymeric Laporte to be in there, given that he's left-footed. So that was probably something potentially that Arteta had prepared for. But as it turned out in the game, we got nowhere near their back 4 anyway. So I think, but those are kind of the main changes. Nathan Ake out for them, and Xhaka coming in for Fabio Vieira. But again, I would have liked to have seen that pivot sort of anchoring the midfield, just providing us. I mean, for me, I'm very much of the school of thought that you play your game where you can, but every now and then you do need to respect the fact that they are an exceptionally good side. And I personally believe that you do have to make tweaks sometimes with the opposition in mind. And if Arsenal had been able to keep it tighter in the first half, who knows what would have happened. But going into the game, I think the Southampton game was particularly deflating. I think after Anfield, you can kind of square it away in your mind and say, right, it's Anfield. Tough game. You saw what they did to Spurs yesterday. Hilariously Spursy moments all round at Anfield yesterday. But I think you can kind of square that away. And then you obviously, West Ham, as those 3 games progressively went on, the points dropped aspect was, it's obviously just got worse and worse and worse. So I basically went into the game thinking, expecting a defeat, which is kind of mad given where we've been as a club of late. And to be honest, the first half, I just think we got schooled. I mean, we really, really did. We obviously, I think it seems to be a bit of a recurring theme away from home against these bigger sides too, where in recent years we've we have actually kind of like conceded an early goal, and I think from that point you're really sort of up against it at that point. And this was no different. I mean, we came out the traps. They pressed us like crazy. There's a lot of talk about them being a team that kind of controls the ball, dominates the kind of tempo with their passing, and then accelerates through the gears pretty quickly. But they were on it from minute one in this game, and with the goal. With the first goal for Kevin De Bruyne after 7 minutes, it was basically us actually pressing high. Odegaard closes down Ederson. He thumps the ball. Route one. There's a lot of negative talk about direct football, but when it's of that quality, I think there's a massive difference between teams that just blindly clear their lines without any kind of thought behind it. But interestingly, how City set up is that they're sort of wide men. Grealish and Bernardo Silva. They were in the game at times, but what I noticed with City is they were really sort of trying to attack up through the centre of the field a lot more, and have Haaland almost dropping in, similar to kind of what Harry Kane does for Spurs. I can't even believe I'm talking about those guys. But Haaland dropping in for in that sort of Kane position. And then Kevin De Bruyne, that stamina and that sort of work in front to run across the line. So, it was a great touch by Haaland. Rob Holding was man marking. He spun him, and then De Bruyne, a lot of work to do, to sort of dribble. The classic where you sort of dribble across the defender, taking that player out of the game. And I must admit, at the time, I did think, could Ramsdale have done a little bit better? But I think when you watch the finish, it does start so far outside the post, and sort of it's hit with real accuracy. I'm inclined to really give Ramsdale the benefit of the doubt on this one, but interesting goal, I would say, because you don't associate City with that type of football, and actually, I think again, I'll give them credit because they've deviated away from the kind of style that they're normally associated with, and they've executed it to perfection. If you don't want to play through the pressing game, whack it over the top, and as long as it's not a blind whack and it's into feet and there's people moving off you, then we got punished. And I think a lot of Arsenal fans from that point, I think when you concede so early, you sort of now that you're up for a tough night potentially. But we hung in there. I have to say, again, City were very, very hungry. They pressed us like crazy. They were. I don't even think we even had a sustained spell of possession and threat. In their final third whatsoever. What really struck me in this game is a lot of talk about Haaland and his goals, but City all across the pitch were just really well organised. Really managed the game well in certain moments. They were almost happy for us to have the ball at certain times of the game, but we never looked like scoring. And you have to say, if we lose on aggregate to City 7-2 over the course of the season, maybe we don't deserve the title. But in that first half, again, it did just feel like a matter of time for that second goal. I mean, we saw that absolutely fantastic block by Ben White, where De Bruyne danced through, and he has a long way to go, and Ben White gets a goal-saving block on it. A time where Haaland sort of drifts into that right hand half space inside the box. Ball gets sort of a little bit stuck underneath him, but Ramsdale again with a wonderful save. But again, the optics around that are as if your goalkeeper is having to pretty much dig you out of a hole every 5 minutes, then you're not playing well. Let's be honest. I mean, with Ramsdale, you want him to kind of be involved when the moment's there and it's called upon, but you want to obviously mitigate how often he gets called into action. But then strangely, as we were sort of approaching the end of the first half, I was thinking, well, it's still only 1-0. We're not playing. We're clearly second best all over the pitch here. But when you start seeing the 40-minute tick up on the clock and you start thinking, okay, if we can get at half time, maybe Arteta will, he's been shown before, particularly during lockdown, the ability to get the players around him and make tweaks and get them refocused. And you're thinking, okay, maybe we do come out. Maybe we can pinch a 1-1. Maybe we can, maybe we can take it to them in the second half a bit more and make this more of a game. And there's obviously the sloppy free kick given away, but then the ball hung up to the far post, and it was just way too easy for John Stones. And clearly Ben White's foot was playing him on. It was a bit of a strange one though, really, because Ben White, you could almost say he wasn't even interfering with play, because the ball's not come near him at any stage, but his foot, by the letter of the law, he's onside John Stones. But it was a good finish with the header. It did feel quite easy for him, but he dispatched it very nicely. And then, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I walked away from the TV after that ball went in the net, because I think whenever you concede early in a game, the tempo sort of goes with the team that scored the goal. And then, obviously when they got that goal just before half time, it's an absolute hammer blow. And from that point, I did kind of fear the worst. For me, it kind of became about how can we stem the flow, and can we keep it tight in the second half potentially, and then if we do pinch one, maybe they'll start to get a bit nervy. But it was a very very tough half of football. But again, I said it at the top of the pod. I just sort of sat there and thought they're very good. They're a very very good side. And I started watching City a lot of late, because I knew obviously we were up against them for the title, and watched them in the Champions League a few times. And Bayern did have a few chances when they played them, for example, but Man City were just on a different level, and they've tended to drop points against slightly smaller sides. Obviously they lost up against Brentford at home, Forest away. They got a draw despite dominating. But I did kind of sit there at half time, and I was actually just quite matter of fact about it, really. But then obviously the second half started. Probably City didn't quite have the level of intensity, but to be honest, when you're 2-0 up, as we found out in the last few weeks, probably that's something again that's the difference between the two sides, is that City were able to really able to sort of game manage, not go hell for leather. But the problem with Arsenal at Anfield and West Ham is when we did sort of take our foot off the gas and try to maybe just be solid, we didn't have the defence to back it up, and we conceded sloppy goals. So at the moment, we feel a bit Newcastle under Kevin Keegan. It feels like we need to score our goals. We need to keep our foot on the gas. We can't, we don't have that solidity behind us to afford to do that. Whereas when City do take their foot off the gas and let us have the ball a bit, I noticed as soon as we got kind of towards their final third, just their shape was compact, it was solid. And that kind of thing. So the game management and the defensive side of the game, which doesn't really get spoken about too much, I thought was superb second half. But nevertheless, we came out. I mean, I think the third goal for me was probably the most disappointing. I think when you're able to have that much space to drift into the box, and particularly someone like Kevin De Bruyne, who's an absolute world-class performer in his position, and to execute what looked like a really simple sort of side-footed finish through the legs of Rob Holding, it was just very, very easy for them. And so that goal for me was poor from our perspective. But like I say, they managed the game really well. They got that third goal, and really it was game over by that stage. And we were able to get a little bit more passing going, but it's too little, too late at that point. I mean, could we have? I know it's a lot of Arsenal fans after the game are saying, we didn't show up, we choked, we didn't. I'm not going to use the B word, but I didn't see it like that in this game. I just felt that they were just on another level, and they were really mentally just on it for that game. And we just couldn't live with it, basically. But as the game went on, obviously got the consolation. To be fair, it was a really good finish by Holding, for a centre half to be able to finish like that in the box, was great. And then the game got stretched. And to be honest, even though the game was lost by that point, I was actually quite annoyed they got their fourth. For me, it was just so frustrating that you can kind of see it coming. The fact that they'd been able to drift through the game a bit, but then we seem to get a little bit more encouragement by the fact that we got that goal. City probably did start to look a tiny bit nervous, but nothing to really write home about. But actually, we seem to carry the most threat when Trossard and Reece Nelson came on. I actually believe Reece Nelson's been quite good of late. I mean, there's a lot of. I do feel sorry for Emile Smith-Rowe not being given much of a game, but I have to say Reece Nelson's probably knocking on the door at the moment to start another game soon for me. I think he came on, he looked bright, he looked lively. He won. I remember him winning a corner with a nice bit of skill, and he was sort of linking up nicely. So yeah, for me, I think he's maybe the story on Reece Nelson isn't finished yet, but yeah, all in all, I think final whistle went, and we were just kind of. Is it over? I think it probably is, to be honest. I mean, again, I don't want to be negative, but do I think the City will drop points again? I do actually think they probably will, but I believe we need them to lose 2 games out of their last 6, or slip up at least in 2 games out of our last 6, and we've got to go to Newcastle, Chelsea, and Brighton. I mean, Brighton with that 6-0 win against Wolves, they're absolutely on fire. So. I don't think Arsenal will win all their games, if I'm honest, and I think City probably will drop points, but I think they'll sort of finish strongly. But full-time sort of view on the game was very much like, wow, we still have a bit of work to do. I mean, you might say, well, we only play City twice a season, and it is it's a 38 game season. What we do against City shouldn't be as important as long as we're doing our business against the other sides. But I do think if you're going to be the best in the team in the league, you've got to beat the best. And we've played them 3 times this season and lost 3 times, and it's not good enough. Like we need to we've got to show. I mean, I will say that more so in this game than others. I think credit must go more to City than negativity being thrown our way, because they were genuinely exceptional, and you have to take your hat off to them. But I do want to see more personality from Arsenal. I do want to see a bit more determination. I do feel like we came out looking a little bit not really mentally at the races, to be honest. That's kind of what I saw from the game. But anyway, onwards and upwards. We've got we can't grumble about it now. We've got obviously a game against Chelsea on Tuesday night. Very sort of interesting game, really. I mean, I think Chelsea have been losing to everyone this season, and for me, I think to myself, well, come on then, let's lose to us. But I do think now the Arsenal players are going to be going to this game we're suffering from a bit of a lack of confidence, to be honest with you. So I mean, I think my main hope this season for the rest of it is please, let's not go out with a whimper. We've been so good this season. We need to kind of come back in and start showing our. I mean, I just think every game's important. Even if you might say, well, if City win the league, these games are dead rubber. We've already qualified for the Champions League. But I do feel like you carry the momentum in sometimes from one season into the other. Pre-season, I think, is more important than what people give credit for, because we saw what a great pre-season did for us this season. We flew out the traps at the start of the Premier League season. So for me, we cannot finish the season on a whimper. Very, very unlikely now we win the league, but we've played some really good stuff this season, and we must start getting back on the winning track as soon as possible. I mean, my sort of view on the Chelsea game is, let's ignore the fact that they are sort of struggling in the lower half of the table. We just need a win. And to be honest, a few weeks ago, I want a classy win by more than the odd goal. I just want us to get over the line. I want 3 points in this game by hook or by crook. However ugly and attritional it is, does not bother me at all. I think we just need a win. We need to be able to go into the games after that back, arresting this slump. I mean, let's be honest, we've only lost once since January. It's not an absolute disaster, but the fixtures we've got coming up in the next few weeks with Brighton and Newcastle after this, it's a tough run. Really, we need to be kind of getting that win against Chelsea as a bit of a platform to go into the games after that. So I mean, my bold prediction for the week is going to be an Arsenal win. I'm not going to put a score on it. I'm not going to put a score on it. I need a win. I need a 1-0 scrappy win. I need a 2-1. I need a 6-0. I don't care how it comes. I just need 3 points. That's the way that I'm seeing it. And because I think, we cannot end this season with a win, but it would leave a bit of a sour taste in the mouth. I mean, on that, I'd be quite interested to hear what you guys think about the whole Europa League. People calling it a blessing in disguise. I mean, I know hindsight, you can kind of look at things in a different way. But I must admit, even at the time where we went out against Sporting, I did think to myself, well, I thought the whole reason we've got Jorginho and we've got Leandro Trossard in now is that when you look at our bench when our players are fit, there's a squad there now that's fairly strong. The players we typically be able to include on our bench are good enough to get through Sporting, and then obviously if you get to the semis and the final, then maybe start to play your full strength 11. But what would be absolutely criminal for me now would be to see a team. Let's use West Ham as an example. If they end up staying in the Premier League and winning the Europa, the Conference League, does that mean they've had a better season? Most fans would say, well, no, we've played better this season. But I was brought up on a diet of Arsenal winning trophies, winning silverware, and for me, if we can't be having a worse season than West Ham. We needed to have stayed in that Europa League or won the FA Cup. If we'd won the FA Cup and finished second in the league, I'll be very happy with that. The great thing about this Arsenal project, though, is that the players are still young, the manager's young and hungry, the club's all aligned with the fans, all the way up to the owners, different levels, different stakeholders. Everyone's kind of bought in. The great thing about having the type of project that we do have is that you would expect next season will go again or be stronger. Certainly for the next 2, 3, 4 seasons, providing we keep this squad together and iterate on it, we will get better. But that's the beauty. We're not the one crumb of comfort I had, and again, City could just go out and buy another 10 or 11 players if they needed to. But the one thing I did think after the game was, a lot of the City players, if you think about Kevin De Bruyne, John Stones, Rodri, all these guys, they're sort of in their prime. And they're certainly not over the hill, but they're players in 2 or 3 years, with their peak potentially would have been done. Whereas I'm really excited to see where this Arsenal team can go next season and the season after that for sure. But massively chastening experience, to be fair. We're just not quite there in my view. But anyway, onwards and upwards. I'm going to leave it there for today. But thanks for joining me. And we'll be back again after the Chelsea game. Hopefully we'll get something to you tomorrow or Thursday. But Moody Gooners, until next time, like, subscribe, share amongst everyone. And we'll catch you on the next one. Bye for now.